The US bombs Iran and takes out one of their main leaders, and the markets reacted fast and sharp. But what will war with Iran mean for our investments? That's the question. And in this video, I'm going to show you what you need to be paying attention to and how to be positioned to profit instead of taking a loss. I like to say be prepared instead of worrying, and I'm going to show you how, so stay tuned. All right, welcome back. I am Mark Moss. Welcome to the channel. I'd like to talk about business, making money, investing our money, and having success in life. Now, today we are talking about some of the most recent news that's happening. Is World War III coming? I don't know, but there's been this major tensions going on. It's got escalated really quickly. The United States dropped bombs on Iran, took out one of their main generals, Soleimani, and there's lots of tension going on. People in the media are speculating, is World War III coming? And we just know that the overall situation is escalating really, really fast. Now, I'm not here to discuss the politics about this. Politics is a very charged issue. There's people on both sides of that. And I'm not here to talk about politics. What we're here to talk about is our investments. And in order to know what's happening with your investments, in order to make money and then not lose money, you need to know what's going on. You have to understand the politics and not taking sides, but you got to understand the situation. And so that's what I want to talk about, how it's going to affect our investments. And I'm going to show you, if you stay to the end, exactly which assets are going to be going up and which ones could be going down. So you'll know how to move and adjust for that. But we're going to try and stay out of the politics, but we'll talk about what's going on, how it's affecting the markets, our assets and investments. And so kind of like I said at the intro, I like to be prepared instead of worrying. And so I don't want to worry all the time. And so I'm prepared, right? I'm not worried about getting in a car accident because I have insurance, right? For example. And so we want to be prepared, and we want to be prepared because we don't know what we don't know. And what I like to say is the smartest guys in the world, they're smart enough to know that they don't know. That's why, the smartest investors in the world, like Warren Buffett, Ray Dalio, they do asset allocation. They allocate their assets in a way that no matter what happens in the market, they can be prepared for that. And so we know, right? What we do know is that trouble is brewing. We know that, right? We see it. World War III, we're on the brink of it, right? So we know that trouble's brewing, but there's also events called black swans. And these black swan events can happen at any time. Basically, what a black swan event is an event that happens, a massive event that happens that wasn't planned for, that wasn't known. So there's always the threat of something that we don't know happening, but we know stuff is happening right now. So we want to be prepared for that. Now, like I said, trouble's brewing. And so we're going to just talk about that a little bit. So we're going to see if you're paying attention or let me fill you in on what you should be paying attention to. So to recap, the U.S. and China have been having trade relations for a while, right? Trade wars, and we've seen that. And the markets were reacting, and the stocks were kind of going down, and Bitcoin was going up, and gold was moving based off of the U.S.-China trade war. But that's been cooling down, at least for the moment. But now in its place, we have tensions between the U.S. and Iran. And now these have been around for decades. The U.S. and the Middle East, and specifically Iran, have been around for decades, but they've been escalating. And really, they've been escalating for the last about 4 or 5 years since President Trump withdrew from the nuclear deal. In addition to withdrawing from the nuclear deal, the U.S. administration has been imposing massive sanctions. And I talk about this a lot, weaponizing the U.S. dollar to slap sanctions and sanctions and sanctions, and they've really put Iran into a tough situation. And so we've seen this escalating a lot over and over. And over the last couple of years, we've been seeing this, like I said, escalate, and there's been retaliation. And we've seen the U.S. blame Iran for attacks on tankers, shooting down a drone. There was a September attack on the Saudi Arabian oil industry. I mean, it cut the production of the Saudi Arabia, kingdom, their production, it cut it in half, and oil prices spiked off of that. And then as Iran has been backing away from more agreements on its nuclear deal, then obviously the latest was the U.S. embassy in Baghdad was attacked. And really was that last provocation, that last thing that I think the U.S. just basically had enough. It was the straw that broke the camel's back. And as we know, President Trump, at least the Trump administration, someone in the White House ordered a hit on the Iranian general and took him out. And again, I'm not saying it was right or wrong. There's a lot of information on that, but those are the facts. And we have to understand those facts because those are the facts that are affecting our investments. Those are the ones that make us lose money and make money. And I'm going to show you which ones they are at the end. So make sure you're staying tuned on this. But of course, so that happened, right? The escalation happened. I just kind of went through that, and we attacked. We took out Soleimani, and then the markets reacted. Boom! The markets reacted. We saw the futures market plummeted before the major U.S. exchanges opened up at about 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. The talking heads in the media dubbed it the Iranian hit dip, and it was a wake-up call for many investors across the country. We saw the Chicago Board of Options Exchanges Volatility Index. It's called the VIX. I've referred to it a bunch of times like other people do. It's the fear gauge, and it jumped 20% in pre-market trading. So the markets were afraid. Everybody was scrambling. The S&P 500 index, Dow Jones Industrial Average, shot down, and it was pretty drastic right away. But after the first half hour of trading, the markets kind of came back. And after that, it was only down about 1%. So they did settle down after a big reaction. And while it was nice to see them settle down after that big reaction, it was a test. It was a small test for your portfolio, for my portfolio. Did my portfolio hold up? Did your investments hold up? And so it was a good time to see that. What would happen if an all-out war broke out? This is just a threat of war, but what would happen if it did? And so what did we see? We saw the futures for oil, Brent crude oil, it's the global benchmark for oil prices, jumped almost 5% to more than almost $70 a barrel, which is a massive jump. It's at the highest level since September, when I referenced that the Saudi Arabia oil facility was taken out. And so oil price had come back down, but it spiked again. Also, gold. We saw our favorite safe haven asset. I call it like a chaos hedge or chaos insurance. And I always recommend holding that for just this purpose. And we saw it shot up also really big. As a matter of fact, at the time I'm recording this, it's at a little over $15.70 per ounce, which is a new all-time high for the year. I think it's up new all-time high in the last 6 years. I did mention that some of the stocks had taken a hit, but some of the stocks that looked to do really well were defensive stocks. So major contractors that, further the industrial military complex, Northrop Grumman, NOC, Lockheed Martin, LMT, those stocks did really, really well. But then we saw stocks like airline stocks, so American Airlines, United Airlines, Delta Airlines, they all were hit hard. Part of the reason why they were hit hard is because, as you might imagine, their biggest cost is their fuel. And so when oil prices skyrocket, the fuel prices are going to skyrocket, which is going to sharply reduce their income. And so those stocks all moved based off of that information. And that's all good and everything, but what comes next? That's what we want to know. We're trying to anticipate what comes next. That's why we're digging into this. So how big does this conflict become in the short term? We don't know. How big does this conflict become in the short term? What type of retaliation will come from Iran next? What are they going to do? We know they're chanting in the streets, right? Death to America. What will they do next? There's all types of questions about this. Everyone's speculating, but we don't know. But we do know that the countries together, something's going to happen with their respective allies. Something's going to happen, but we don't know for sure. But we know the various world leaders are going to act. But what does that mean for our investments? Now, as I said, I just kind of gave you the latest blueprint, play-by-play of how stocks would react from a Middle East crisis. So that's kind of what would tell us how they'd react over a longer, more extended Middle East crisis. And so the time to prepare is right now. It's kind of like I mentioned in the beginning, having insurance on my car. You don't buy insurance after you wreck your car. You buy insurance before you wreck your car. And so the time to prepare is right now. You want to make sure your portfolio isn't left exposed. You want to make sure that those types of assets I mentioned, oil, gold, defense industry stocks, airline stocks, make sure that you're positioned properly at that. At a minimum, right, a move just like we saw before, a move that shocked the futures market overnight, it should be an alert to everybody. It should be an alert to investors to check your own portfolio. Make sure you're not overweight in certain areas in your portfolio, and make sure you have enough exposure to assets that could take off. Like I said, the safe haven assets, the defensive allocations and all that. But that's not all that you should be considering. The big one is going to be oil. Like I said, this is unlikely to be the last flare-up that we're going to have. I mean, this has been going on for decades, and it's only been escalating. And so oil prices and the supply are very, very sensitive to conflict in that area. And unrest in the Middle East would most likely I mean, for sure, it's going to diminish the world supply, right? Supply and demand. So you choke off that supply, you bring the supply down, it pushes the price up. And oil prices are very, very sensitive to that. And even if Iran doesn't directly attack the U.S., I mean, it still could do it through its American allies like Saudi Arabia, which we've already seen a few months ago. And so anything like that could leave the oil production down. And any drastic move down on oil production is going to have a massive impact on the price. So you might want to look at having some oil stocks in your portfolio just in case that happens, maybe some futures against that. And if you haven't gotten into other traditional safe haven assets like gold, steady dividend paying stocks, cash flow investments like I always talk about, then you should. You should be looking at that because safe haven assets are going to be the place to go if stuff really continues to escalate. And like I said, it's so critical that you act before we're in this melt up territory, not after the crisis erupts. You want to do it before. And the situation doesn't look like it's going to be getting any better anytime soon. As a matter of fact, it's most likely going to get worse before better. Now, as a bonus, another area that you should be looking at is cybersecurity stocks. A lot of people are saying that if Iran were to retaliate, and odds are it's going to retaliate, that they would likely do a cybersecurity, a cyber attack as part of their attack strategy. And so cybersecurity stocks could be a good place to do that. But like I said at the beginning, we want to be prepared instead of worrying. And so today's market action, I mean, it's shown us the resiliency of this bull market. The bull market just continues to go on. Like I said, we're in this melt up cycle before the melt down. And so this bull market is running so fast that a little bit of bad news is not going to stop it. But it can also show us that surprises, unknown events, like a bomb, can alter expectations like in a minute, right? And so let this serve as a reminder, like a close call, like, whew, that was a close one. Let it be a reminder to us that we want to be prepared before the crisis happens. Look at how this market crisis affected your portfolio and the assets that you're holding, and make sure you're positioned accordingly. Now, if you don't know how to check out your assets in your portfolio to make sure if you're positioned accordingly, well, I can help you out with that. So I put together this guide. It's a free guide. It's a report. I think it's like 20 pages long, and it goes through the 4 different types of assets that you need to be looking at to balance out, to be prepared for anything. Like I said, be prepared, don't be worried. And it's my free gift to you. I know I talk a lot about different assets, and so this brings it all together and shows you how to use those different assets to have this portfolio that can withstand these types of shocks in the market. And like I said, it's my free gift to you. You'll find it linked down below in the description, and just download it. Read it through. It's going to give you a lot of information. I highly recommend it. And that's it. I'd love to hear from you in the comments down below how your own portfolio held up through this shock. You can say good or bad. Also, you can let me know, do you think that this escalation has continued to continue? Just say continue. Or do you think it'll be resolved quickly? And you could just say quickly. I'd love to get a poll from everybody to see what that's like. And so I'll make additional content on that if you want. Of course, as always, give me a thumbs up on this button. Smash that like button, please. It really helps other people get to see this video. And if you're not subscribed already, subscribe. Hit that bell notification so you're notified every time I put out a new video. And then leave a comment. I'd love to have conversations with each and every one of you down below. And that's it. To your success. I'm out.